Two people can hear the exact same words of Jesus. One will stand firm, and the other collapses completely. Same situation, different foundations. And Jesus says the difference comes down to one thing. Let's take a look in this video. Throughout this series, we've walked through some of Jesus' hardest teachings. The entire Sermon of the Mount from Matthew 5 to Matthew 7 has some teachings and advice and instructions from Jesus. And now Jesus finishes it with one final warning. And that final warning is, don't have your foundations built on the sand. Build your foundation on the rock. Not on something that will collapse and fade away, but on something that will be eternal and will never be moved. That's what Jesus is saying. And it's a famous part of Matthew, verse 7, build your foundation on the rock. So let me just read it for you now. Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell and the floods came and the winds blew and beat on that house, but it didn't fall because it had been founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain fell and the floods came and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. It's a wonderful image that Jesus portrays in the Sermon on the Mount. It is something we can all quickly put in our heads and picture it. Now what he's saying is there's two types of builders. There's two types of houses. Because everyone's trying to build a life. Everyone is trying to build a belief system and a future. And that is good and noble things. But you need to make sure you're building your life on the right thing. And so Jesus talks about building our life on the rock. Who is the rock? The rock is Jesus Christ, the cornerstone. Build your foundations upon Jesus. And so that way, when things go wrong or you have storms in your life, you will have no problems because God will guide you through them. You will still have problems, sorry. Of course, we will all have problems. But if you focus on Jesus, he'll be able to help you get through them. And not only will you come through them, but your foundations will be stronger and your house, so to speak, will be stronger because God has helped you get through that tumultuous period in your life. But if your foundation is built on the whims of anything in this world, it will crumble. It will be like a house built on sand that just crumbles because there is no foundation. There is nothing to keep it strong when storms come, when the trials of life come along. And that is why we need Jesus. And that is why Jesus should be our foundation. And so this example of two builders, one builds on the rock, one builds on the sand. And the difference is both heard the words of Jesus. Both heard them. It says in verse 24, everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man. But then it goes in 26, and everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them. So there's choices here. As Jesus has pointed out many times, you can choose to follow Jesus. You can choose to ignore him. You can choose to do your own will. You can choose yourself above Jesus. Because there is a cost to following Jesus, of course. Following Jesus means that we surrender our own lives to him. Because we live for him and not ourselves. And that is what the difference is. You might hear the word of God and not follow it. But then it says your life will be built on sand. And so when things come and trials come, you will find trouble in this world because of it. And the house fell down. The foundations couldn't support what was being built. But the ones who listened to the words of Jesus, they were transformed. They were completely renewed and changed because it was built on the rock. Because they listened to the words of Jesus and then they obeyed those words. That's the difference. You can listen but not obey. But Jesus is saying you need to listen and obey. And that was the difference between the two builders. That's why one house stood and one house didn't. Because that foolish builder simply ignored the words of Jesus. And that led to trouble. And so, as I mentioned before, what happens is those storms actually reveal the foundations. When a storm comes and your life falls apart, the foundation is revealed. Because if your foundation in Jesus, as I said, you will go through storms, you'll go through persecution, you'll go through suffering. And we are not exempt as Christians from hardship. Christians will face hardship as well as people who don't believe. You'll go through suffering. You'll go through doubt. You'll go through loss, temptation, cultural pressure. That's normal. But the difference is the foundation. Because if that foundation is built on the rock, then that storm won't do the damage that it does if your house is built on the sand. Because that house will remain standing. It might lose a bit of paint, might lose a few tiles on the roof, but it will still remain standing. And that's what putting our trust in Jesus does. He will guide us through the storms and purify us so that we come out stronger. We actually come out stronger when we go through those trials because we've put our trust in Jesus. And so, finishing up here with a couple more points, I just want to talk about the sand. Sand actually looks like it can be stable temporarily. If you've compacted it and it's wet sand, it actually looks really stable. And these easy foundations are just following what culture says, or surface Christianity, just having that Christianity that we can have morality without Christ, so to speak, and just live on the surface of Christianity. But when feelings change or when something happens, then those foundations of sand get revealed and they actually crumble. Because as we've talked about in previous series of not judging, loving our enemies, worry, and the narrow gate, this is Jesus talking about discipleship. And so if you're being discipled by the world and by culture and by just being a surface Christian, then those foundations will eventually crumble. But there is good news. As we know, there is great news, because Jesus Christ is the rock. Jesus Christ says, build our foundations on him. Because if we build our foundation on Jesus, it won't be through self-effort. It won't be through religion. It will be through obedience to Christ and faith in Jesus Christ. And when we obey him through that, we will have our lives transformed. Because that obedience will produce and continue to enhance our faith. That rock is actually not just hearing Jesus and ignoring those words, but it's hearing Jesus and building our foundation upon him. Because eventually, and let me finish with this, eventually every single person will face a storm. Every single one of us. And when those times come, and there might be multiple through our lives, what matters most is not how spiritual someone sounded, or how religious and pious you may have appeared, or even how many sermons that you've heard on a Sunday. That won't do it. The question is, what are you actually building your foundation on? Are you building your foundation on the rock, where the house cannot be shaken and cannot be moved? Or are you building your foundation on sand? And if you have built your foundation on sand, it's not too late. It's not too late to actually rebuild that house on the rock. And God will help you do that. Jesus will provide you with the guidance to do that. It's never too late. But Jesus is saying, build your foundation on him. Build your life's foundation on him. And you will then move into the purposes that God has for you. And when that storm comes, you'll be able to fight against it and survive, because Jesus provides us with hope and a future. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Cheers. Thank you so much for watching this video. If this video spoke to you, I would encourage you to hit that subscribe button on the YouTube channel, and also to like and comment on my videos to help this channel grow, where I continue to teach on biblical topics and things that I just find in my own personal study. And I hope you enjoy each and every one of these videos. Thank you so much.